Well, in fact, that's a good song. I like to play it all for you. You might not hear it as clear as you'd like to hear it, but that song is by former Jehovah's Witness Richard Thrift and his friends. Maybe you couldn't hear the words too well with it, and we want to thank Richard for writing that song. It has a lot to do with being involved in the witnesses. Of course, Richard Thrift was involved with them. But thank you, Richard. Good job. Barbara sent it to me today. And we'll play more of it from time to time right here on the 6 screens. So I appreciate what you've done, Richard. And I want to bring Barbara on right now. Hello, Barbara.
Hey, Richard. I didn't hear the music at all at this end.
You didn't?
No.
Now, that is weird. That is totally weird. I'll tell you what I'll do. At the end of the program, I'll play it.
Okay.
All right, at the end of the program, I'll play it. Yeah, so when Joy comes on and answers questions on the telephone, we'll see why that was not working, but we'll get it working. We'll play that clip. So listen, if you guys are listening on YouTube and Facebook, we will play the music. I liked it. Geez, I was kind of bouncing around to it today. It was really good, but I want them to hear it. We'll get that up for them.
Good melody. Yeah.
All right, so everyone's listening in, they can hear everything going on. I just don't know why the music didn't play. But let's tell us, let's bring Joy on. Let's add her right now. Hello, Joy.
Hi.
Hi. Well, thank you for coming on.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. Barbara, why don't you tell us about your really great guest here tonight? Tell us about Joy.
Well, she's going to do a lot of telling, I'll tell you. So, she knew people that many of the listeners have just heard about. And she had a very interesting life, striving to be a perfect JW woman, just like I tried to be a perfect JW woman. We tried to obey the rules for the women in Jehovah's organization, didn't we, Joy?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, is it possible to really become a perfect Jehovah's Witness woman? I know you couldn't become a perfect Jehovah's Witness man, but
they have to be that. They have to do their rules, the manly rules, and we had to do the womanly rules. Hey, I got a little experience. I'll give you an idea.
Yeah.
It's a doozy. My first article I wrote for the Awake magazine, and I was told that don't put the ending to it. So I took it into the Awake editor when I was done. And he said, he read it over. He said, oh, this is really good. But he had it edited before that. But he looked at the conclusion and he said, okay, what kind of ending do you want? What scriptures would you like to use? So I said, okay. And I gave him 3 scriptures that I wanted to conclude my article with. So he sat there, and this is pre-computer, right? This is typewriter. So he sat there and he typed it all in. And when he finished, he said, okay, that's it. Well, let me tell you why he had to do that. If I typed it in, I would be teaching males who would read the article.
They were that fussy about it? Yeah.
Oh, yes, because God's sitting up there, right? And he's saying, a woman typing my scriptures for men to read. That's how it was for me. And the other experiences that Joy had, but that's an example.
Well, we're looking forward to it. So I'll kind of bow out of here, but I'm here. I'll be listening in. I'll get the pitches up too. You just tell me when you want the pitches. And also, I'll play Richard Thrift's song there at the end, okay?
Yes.
And
Thank you.
Joy doesn't mind if we ask her some questions. We have a lot of people listening in on our telephone radio network. So near the end of the program, Joy, you don't mind if we ask you questions?
No.
All right. Well, I like that attitude. That's a good attitude. I think Barbara's really rubbing off on you. Well, both you guys got a really good attitude. That's good. That's what we like. All right, I'll bow out of here, and I'll let you guys take it away.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Hey, Joy.
Hey, Barbara.
Joy and I have a long friendship, and I've always admired her because she's an achiever. And she's done things that I only dreamed of doing. But it's because she broke free from the Watchtower and pursued her dream. But how she got there is what y'all are going to find very interesting, and who she met on the journey. Okay. So, Joy, start us off and tell us about the witnesses in the life of your family.
Well, first of all, I'll back up to my parents started studying in the 1950s, were baptized in the 60s. So I grew up in the Watchtower organization. I think it was, January of 1972, after the Truth Book, we're all looking forward to 75. I went ahead and graduated high school early and started pioneering. So by the end, believe it or not, by May of 1972, I married an ex-Bethelite who came to the area, and we went off together pioneering in a small rural congregation.
That was a marked year, 1972. If people who are listening, they probably don't realize what happened in the organization.
Yeah, in that year. So if you can imagine, I was young. When I look back now, that was way too young to get married. But anyway, I was young. I was 18 years old. That was the summer when the elder arrangement came to the congregations. So this small little congregation that we moved to, there was 3 brothers there, and they all became elders. I was an elder's wife at 18, believe it or not.
Well, I don't know that you knew exactly what you were in for. But
a lot more pressure than I realized.
That's very, very true. As myself, was an elder's wife too. Congregation servant's wife. I go back too far.
Right. I remember that phrase. Yes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And but it didn't seem to me that so much was expected of us when the women under that arrangement until the elders situation it was evolving. Then it was more stress.
Right. Because it was brand new the summer of 1972, the elder arrangement. Yeah. So being a pioneer, full-time pioneer, an elder's wife, supporting, my husband and I supported our work by painting. We were busy. We were looking forward to 1975.
Tell us who your husband was. Now, we're not going to really, because you have children and grandchildren, we're not going to really tell your married name. But we are going to ask you about him, just exactly what attracted to you, and how did you meet him and all of that.
Well, he had come from the congregation I was in. He went to Bethel, served for 5 years, even was on the speaking assignment there, where the Bethelites go out and speak in the different congregations in New York and around different states. So when he came home, of course he looked like a good catch, right? Anyway, so we got to know each other pioneering. The congregation was kind of surprised, like, you guys are getting married? All the pioneers knew in the congregation that we were seeing each other out in service. But what we did is we got married, moved to a small rural congregation of about 34 publishers, and we stayed there for about 2.5 years. What was interesting is the other families there. Like I said, there was 3 elders. One elder that was there had 4 kids already, and he was probably in his late 20s when he was appointed. My husband was 24 when he was appointed, and the other couple was Mark and Jean Lett. They had moved up from Alabama to serve where the need was greater at the time. So we got to know them very well for the 2.5 years.
Why are they famous?
Well, because you probably know their son, Steve Lett. So of course, we met their kids, Steve and Tim Lett. We met their wives, because they would come visit their dad. And when it was only the 4 of us that were pioneering, we got to know them quite well out in service. And they were the ones that were able to come to this rural congregation because he was a millionaire. He had a farm down in Alabama.
The parents, the father?
The parents did, yes. The parents did. Steve and Sue Lett were special pioneers farther up in Illinois where we were at. We were in Illinois at the time. But we got to know the Letts very well, Mark and Jean. And for us poor little pioneers that made maybe 100 a week painting down in the area where we came from, that was a big eye-opener to us, is that, there were rich witnesses out there. So anyway, that way we got to know Steve Lett. I remember my husband, when we first met Mark, he was surprised he was Steve Lett's dad, because my Steve knew Steve Lett at Bethel in the 60s. They were both there as single brothers.
Oh.
And towards the end of the 60s, early 70s, Steve Lett started partaking. And of course, there was a lot of people at Bethel that kind of raised their eyebrow about that.
He
why
was
someone
young,
in their teens, yes, why someone in their teens, early 20s is now starting to partake. So we always my husband and I always kind of laughed about, this, there's Steve Lett. Wonder what he's up to.
Were there some others that were young like that?
Yes, in our circuit, there was 3 couples that were young couples. In fact, when we went off, we kept applying to go back to Bethel. That was our goal. When we went to Bethel, another couple, Gary and Ruby Bro, were in the area. They were invited in the circuit work. And then another couple went into the special pioneer work. So you can see we kind of hung out together. We were very spiritually oriented, trying to keep spiritual goals in mind. But in fact, after we left that small congregation, Mark and Jean Lett went into the circuit work. So it was nice keeping up with all those people for a while. You get busy at Bethel, and sometimes your friendships just fall away. But it was nice to know those people, and they had an impact in my life early on when I was young.
So
Joy, I'm just sorry I'm coming in. This is Rick from the Six Queens. I'm going to have you come a little closer to your microphone, Joy.
Oh, can you not hear me?
Well, no, we can hear you, but that sounds better right there.
Okay.
So
that sounds. Talk louder.
Yeah, that's good. You're doing good. We can hear you, but we really want to hear you really good. So
okay.
right where you are right now is fine. Sorry. Okay, all set. Yep.
So where were we?
Okay, so you there was a family that was in that congregation that you assisted. That it had a lot of that has a lot of meaning in your life.
It had an impact in my life because of what happened to me later on, what I became later on. This was a rural congregation, small town area, and they had 4 kids. One of their kids had developmental problems because they had gone to the hospital. The nurses wouldn't let her deliver until the doctor got there, and it caused problems for the baby. The baby had developmental problems, so they were very apprehensive about going back to the hospital with their 5th baby. And my husband and I used to get old books, go to the book fair, and I had a nursing book that talked about home births from the 1930s. And we said to them, well, we'll help you have a home birth if that's what you want, because she went fast anyway. The hospital that she would go to, not the one she'd gone with the other babies, was like 2 or 3 blocks away, and she felt very comfortable with that. So believe it or not, in January of 75, we helped them with the home birth, and in February, we were at Bethel.
Well, you were nervy,
Yeah. Yeah, when you look back on it, I say, but you have to remember that time period. There was a lot of transitioning in the medical field because they were going from heavily medicated births in the hospital to natural births. And,
Well,
that's what kind of piqued my interest. I was a young woman thinking what's ahead for me in the future, and learned from that experience. But going to Bethel, I met different Gilead students that were nurse midwives from Britain. And I thought, wow, you gave that up to go be a missionary? I thought, I
mhm.
don't know if I had that training, would I stay in that field or not?
Well, what happened? The laws. What about the laws?
Oh, well, what happened is we went to Bethel, was there for
No,
a year and a half.
no. But the laws in the state where you delivered that baby. That's
That's
what I want to know.
At that point, there was no law against home birth.
Ah,
There
okay,
was no laws.
okay,
But later on, that's what becomes important in my story is later on.
yeah.
But we were there for a year and a half at Bethel. Um, I was in the house. I was a housekeeper, trained as a housekeeper first, and then went to the upholstery shop. As a housekeeper, you meet many different of the elderly women, the older women, the governing body wives and stuff, and was starting to hear concerns. They were going through menopause and thought, oh my gosh, they were going through menopause before 1975. They didn't have their kids. There was no guarantee that they would have kids, and it really hit them hard. So that was impressed on me. There was one sister from the branch overseers were all called in from around the world. And she came and worked in the upholstery shop with me. And she kind of lamented. She goes, had we known now what, back then, she said, we would have had a family first and then go into the full-time work. So she was really missing out having had kids or having a family. So that impressed me. My husband, 75 came and went, and he was like, well, let's leave and go have a family. And I'm like, oh no, that's not on my.
Oh, you wanted to stay at Bethel?
I loved
Usually,
Bethel.
it's the other way around. That
I
the
know. I loved Bethel. He hated the city. He hated the city. But I loved Bethel. I loved the organization of it. I loved everything about it, the camaraderie. It was very, that was right up my alley. But I realized that he was suffering from it. He did not like the city at all. So we left in the fall of 76. In fact, the weekend when we left, 13 couples left, which was quite significant. But everyone was looking at, well, 75's come and gone. Maybe we should go have a family. And that's what a lot of the couples did at that point, which was, I thought it was quite significant. So we ended up in a small, again, a rural town outside of the St. Louis area. And that's when I started back to helping people having home births. I started going to different people, like some doctors that were doing home births, going on with them, getting as much knowledge as I could from them. There was conferences up in Iowa, Illinois, Missouri. I would try to get a hold of anyone else that was doing home births and gained a lot of knowledge that way. The only thing, it came to the point when the laws in Missouri changed and you couldn't do home births without being a certified nurse midwife. And that's when I looked at going into school. Becoming a nurse first. The track in the United States to become a midwife legitimately is to become a nurse first, a registered nurse, and then go on to midwifery school.
Well, what was Steve doing? You were looking at this in this direction. He wanted to be out of Bethel. So in the fall of 76, when you were in rural Missouri, what was he doing?
Well, he was doing part-time jobs, whatever he could do. I was doing part-time jobs too by doing some more upholstery. I set up a small upholstery shop, but that was quite boring after a while because I couldn't look after my two babies. I had two kids by then.
You did.
And run an upholstery shop. So that's when I figured out how to go into nursing school. And eventually the goal was to get into midwifery school. So once that happened, it was in 81 to 83, I was in nursing school. And then I was able to apply in 87, 88 that I was in midwifery school. So was there problems for that? Absolutely. Steve was hassled. He was one of the elders in that congregation, happened to be the PO at the time, the presiding overseer. So he was able to kind of say, leave her alone. She's going to help other sisters. I had helped at least 30 or 40 families by that time with home births, and they could understand. Yeah, they could understand, well, yeah, that's a skill that we may need in the new system. So they kind of left me alone, not thinking it's not a career. She's just going to go help and be available for after Armageddon to help people.
And Steve, was he working? Was he?
He was working part-time. And he was supportive. He would even want to go with me on the home births at
Okay.
times,
Is that right?
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Kind of like he wanted to make sure he knew what I was doing.
Isn't that was he there when you had your babies?
Oh, of course. He delivered the second one. The first one, we were started off as a home birth and ended up in the hospital due to some complications. The second one he delivered, it was just him and I at home. And then
I don't think I would go for that. I would want Joe.
hindsight, we shouldn't have done that. But we were knowledgeable. We were the ones in the area. The doctors referred to us that if you want a home birth, go talk to this woman. So anyway, I know it was crazy. It wasn't any formal education, but it was a lot of lay education, from other midwives, things like that.
Interesting. So now he was growing. What would you call more and more involved with the organization?
Well, yeah. Remember, he was on the speaking assignment at Bethel when he was there single, and then again he was reappointed to the speaking assignment. And gave district assembly talks, circuit assembly talks, things like that. So he was, that's where his interest lied. And after I went to midwifery school, which happened to be in Houston,
was that a special school? I mean, what was the university? Was it a
Baylor College of Medicine had a program?
Oh,
yeah, because at the time there was 26 midwifery schools in the country. But I ended up going to Baylor College of Medicine. And what was interesting, of course, the congregation kind of questioned, well, who are you going to college? And, then we tell them, well, we're ex-Bethelites, we're raising a family now. And the city overseer down in Houston happened to be our friends that we did painting for when we were pioneers and knew us and said, leave them alone. They're fine. Don't worry about it, type deal. So the friends couldn't say anything, I guess. Again, Steve, having the connections, the city overseer, district assembly parts, special committees, things like that. He was moving up the ladder in the organization. Of course, I was the dutiful wife that tried to promote that and made sure he had time and availability to do such things.
So, what was your dream at that point? Now you're working. Are you just listed with a hospital or how to?
Well, after midwifery school, I interviewed at 3 different locations, picked the job in Atlanta, Georgia, and found out I would make a lot more money than Steve. So what we did is then he stayed home to educate the kids. We were homeschooling our kids, and I would go to work. Again, he'd be available to go out and get whatever, do whatever the society needed for him to do in that location. And we were there for 10 years in the Marietta area. Got to know a lot of good friends. I happened to get into a good group as far as the midwives, and eventually another midwife and I and a doctor set up our own practice and hired people. We had a nice practice. In fact, that practice is still going to this day. I happened to sell my share of the practice in 98, and we moved to Florida because I wanted, the stress of the job, the city, everything like that. And I thought it'd be much nicer, calmer to be in a smaller town in Florida.
So you, as far as Steve was concerned, you were really the perfect JW.
Yes, I would do anything to make sure he had the time, availability, money, whatever. I was the primary breadwinner.
So he was free to be used by the organization constantly. Yes. I remember when I met him, that was the impression that I got. He was a name in the area, and you were a slave in the area, I think.
Well, the sisters work behind the scenes, so I kept my job low. I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. It would be interesting to me that here I'd go to work and handle life and death situations because it was a hospital practice that I was in.
Oh.
And still not have a voice at the at the meetings.
Yeah. That's a good point. Well, how did you deal with the blood issue?
Well, in my mind, there was a sister when I was going to nursing school that was head of the hospital. And she kind of said to me, you know what, we can't interfere with what the doctor's orders. I did make a stand when I was in nursing school not to go to the Red Cross to learn how to hang blood. But in practice, I always figured if the patient needs blood, then I've got a doctor involved. It's just not a midwife's decision at that point. And so I rationalized it's between the doctor and the patient, and I'm not going to interfere with that. If he ordered blood, then, I would make sure those orders were being taken care of.
I see. That's interesting. We never really hear about that kind of development with the people. You usually hear about the doctor making the decisions, and
Right. But
yeah.
advanced registered nurse practitioners, that was in our protocols, our practice, that we can order blood too if someone came in hemorrhaging or
Okay.
something happened after a delivery, or just, that's part of practicing midwifery.
So you were considered a nurse practitioner.
Yeah, I was advanced registered nurse practitioner.
I see.
Yes, my specialty was midwifery.
I see how that works. Great.
Yes.
So you had this business going in Georgia.
Yes.
And well, here goes.
Right. Well, then we moved to Florida. And so in Florida, where our good friends were, in fact, I started her prenatal care in Houston. They moved to Florida. I delivered their baby at home, believe it or not. And then once I sold our practice, we decided to move there to Florida. It's a pretty area. And we started traveling the country. We were able to buy a motorhome. And in the summertime, we traveled across the country. And that's where I was figuring out that Steve was getting online. He was big into computers. He had started back in the late 70s when our kids were babies, when computers first started coming out, because he made a program to keep track of the public talks for our congregation and in the circuit, to make sure he didn't have the same speaker, every week or every 3 months. He made sure he had it. And the society really frowned upon him using a computer because they were very scared back then. What is this thing, a computer? So anyway, then when we moved to Florida in the 98, and we started traveling, he was on the computer a lot. There was chat rooms now, the internet was going on. And I always got concerned, like, why is he going away and going to these chat rooms? What is he doing? Well, at one point he finally said, well, I'm trying to figure out why these people are leaving the witnesses, because if we have the truth, we should be able to defend the truth anywhere. We should be able to talk to these ex-witnesses and convince them to come on back to the organization. Well, about that time, in the late 90s, I had heard rumors that Ray France had written a book, because we loved Ray France and we were
You knew him in Bethel?
Yeah, we knew him at Bethel, him and Cynthia at Bethel. And he was our favorite governing body member because he was so reasonable. He reasoned on the scriptures, encouraged us not to just read one Bible, but to read several to get the thought of what was going on, to really look into it. And we had weekly Bible studies with people that we invited, Bible readings, I should say, that they would come and they enjoyed our discussions that we had with whatever the assigned Bible reading was for that week. So anyway, here's Steve thinking, I need to help these people that are leaving the organization. And I finally figured out that, I think he's got the book Crisis of Conscience from Ray France. And when I asked him about it, he was so scared I'd turn him in that he gave me the book to read. And I could not put it down.
Where did you get it from? Did he send away for it?
I don't know. I can't remember how he obtained it.
Well, how'd you hear about it?
You just hear from people, the elder groups that we were in, our friends. I don't know, unless he heard about it on the internet and kept dropping hints to me about it. I don't know. But I always heard that if you read Ray's book, you won't be in the organization very long. And we're like, what did Ray have to say? Because we had saved the Time article, remember, that had written when Ray was kicked out of the Watchtower organization back in the 80s, 79, 80s. We had, kept a kind of alert of what was going on. We got busy raising families, busy with, working, provided for our family. That the things that we saw at Bethel in the 70s we thought would eventually come to the congregations, like the committees, being more nice to the congregations, not being so judgmental, kicking people out and not talking to them. But after a while, we woke up and thought, what? We said, what is going on? Why aren't we treating people like we think they should be treated? So anyway, I got the Crisis of Conscience book from him, read it through. And of course, the scripture that stuck in my mind was quit touching the unclean thing, and thought, we got to leave. We got to get out of here. This is crazy. And he said, no, let's slow down. Let's see if we can get our families out and our friends out to make sure they're not captured in this type of world. And so it took a while. We started getting involved in other things. That's where we met you and Joe. We went to the Silent Lambs Vigil up in Kentucky for Bill Bowen. We met you and Joe at that and thought, what honorable way to leave an organization, but to stand up for kids who can't speak for themselves.
That was around 2001, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. So
we
that's
were
what
there.
we went to the newspaper, we went
That
to
was
the
before.
TV.
See, Bill had talked to a newspaper person.
Yes,
And they
yes,
did a little TV thing about him leaving the church, and he was disfellowship.
right.
So it was quite exciting. That was before I was on Dateline.
Yes,
We kept that
yes.
quiet. I was already
We
dealing
know
with
that.
it, but we didn't say a word about it. And
Right.
so we were part of a really neat group. You
Yes.
guys, and there were people from Washington State and from California, and who were really investigating.
Right.
It
Right.
was just like a turn of the century, right? The turn of the century, and woo!
Right.
Things were really happening.
Right. They were really happening. I think it was in the spring of 2003 that we knew the elders in our congregation was watching us online. So we tried to, whatever comments we made on whatever thread and at XJW group was kind of slanted towards them to maybe open their minds. Look what's going on, or why did we reply this way? Why is that the standard answer for the Watchtower and not what should be, what's realistic? Anyway, they finally caught up with us in the spring of 2003.
Yeah.
I
mean,
went
you guys were really active behind the
Yes.
scenes. We wondered when you were going to get caught.
yeah, because we were still in good standing. Steve was
Yeah.
still an elder when we went and marched with Silent Lambs up at Bethel.
Yeah.
That was, to me, kind of brave of us to do that, because we knew the Bethelites were looking down from the windows, and some would recognize us from the 70s.
Yeah, during that march, I had the one picture. I didn't have too much time to locate the other pictures, but I got one to Rick, and it was Joe and I holding a sign of during the march. But I have plenty of pictures somewhere in this house that I have to scan from that march, and that was very, very.
Are we going to see that picture?
That was
no, you don't have it ready to be put up.
Barbara, I'm here. A little bit.
There was only one picture that I could get that was already scanned, and I didn't have time to put the others in. So
yeah, I can't get the picture up. For some reason it won't go up on my computer here.
Okay.
I downloaded it, but it did show you and Joe holding a sign. You were a protester. I didn't realize you got involved in protesting. I think that's wonderful.
Oh, Rick, you just
yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, she was involved in protesting.
I keep that quiet, Rick, because I'm old now. I don't want to march.
Yes.
Yes. Rick is marching, and he's really into all of this, and which we admire him and all the others who are doing it. After a while, other people take over. You can't go on, forever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you guys were caught. You were caught. I can see those elders behind the scenes talking about Steve, especially Steve.
Yeah. So in 2003, the springtime, they asked me to come in for a judicial meeting. Steve and I went in, asked both of us, and I told him, right away, I'm going to take a separate car because I don't believe this stuff. And if I'm not happy with them, I'm going to walk out. He says, that's your prerogative. So the first thing they asked me about, what do you think about the blood issue? Because they saw my comments on it, that how can, life be more, how come blood, the symbol of life, be more precious than life itself? So they asked me about it. Is that your comments? And I turned and asked them, what is the blood policy? And the elder said, well, I don't know. I'd have to look it up. I said, don't be in an accident on the way home, because you would not even save your own life, because if you don't know the blood policy. And I got up and left. Never heard from the elders again. Only one elder came by my house after that to say, I will miss you. He was a theocratic school overseer, because I count on you for the impromptu talks. I know you're always available. You always study ahead of time, and that, I can count on you that if someone doesn't come, that you would give an impromptu talk. Oh. And that's all he said. No one came and said to me, you're disfellowshipped. We had to hear it through the grapevine, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So here we lost our community. You know, you have to realize witnesses, they're a community. You rely on one another. You do things for one another. So we're here in this small rural area in Florida people would walk away from me in the grocery store if they saw me. They would turn and actually run away after I was, kicked out.
And
So here,
and this were the years that you were working 24-hour shifts, if I remember, in Dothan, Alabama. And Steve was raising the kids just about, right?
Well, our youngest then was 10. So yes, he was homeschooling and the others were older.
And he was giving talks, he was putting together material. So once he wasn't in the organization any longer. And
then he started doing some building. He was a builder, remodeler and builder. But again, I was still the major breadwinner.
Yeah.
You
had
for
a
the family.
Home, which many of us enjoyed. You were on the beach.
Yeah, we had a nice beach house.
Yeah, it was very, very, very pleasant.
Yeah.
And we appreciated your hospitality.
Right. And you know what? That was what happened when we left the organization. Our community was online with all the XJWs. So I remember one fall, and it could have been the fall of 2003, my memory's bad, that we invited anyone that was in the chat rooms that wanted to come visit us. Let's have a Halloween party.
Yeah.
Over 80 people showed up from from England, from Washington State, from California. I mean, all over the country came. And we had a ball and we got to know them. And I'm still friends with many of them that came in.
We had such a good time. I remember one couple came he was a priest and she was a nun.
Yes. She was a pregnant nun, remember?
She was pregnant, yeah. And it was so funny. Yes. We weren't making fun of people. We were making fun of
yes, I know. It was no holds bar, was it? But it wasn't just like a one night. We had it for the whole weekend. So people came in, there was motels on the beach around us that they could stay. And we had a good time. We really did.
Yeah. Well, you replaced one community with another community, but we all carry the same baggage. That's my expression that I use. And so these strangers, we certainly identified with, because we were all going through the same shunning.
Right.
Our community was gone.
Right. And that's what's hard, because if you don't have the immediate community to fall back on, yes, it was great to find all these friends from around the world. It's still hard to be able to have someone right there saying, oh, I need help with this, or can you watch the kids for this, or whatever. So it was an adjustment period. Steve and I had always said, because we had that nice house, that anyone that was leaving the organization could stay with us. We'll help you transition, especially Bethelites, if they want to leave Bethel, to be able to come. We'd help you get through, that transitional period. Mm-hmm. Well, one day a woman showed up that had been
Before you go into that, I have to get. I want you to tell folks about your mother and father. I want you to tell them how they reacted to your leaving the organization.
Well, technically, my dad died in January of 2003. And I kind of warned him on his deathbed, because he was in the intensive care unit, that we will probably be kicked out of this organization. He said, I will never stop talking to you.
I thought he was such a nice man.
He was with the regional building committees. He traveled all over the South for that. And I think his eyes were getting to be opened. He was a temporary circuit overseer back in the Midwest. He was.
Wasn't he an engineer or something?
He was a civil engineer. Yes, he was a civil engineer. Yeah. So anyway, yes, he said that, and
he was so nice to Joe and I. And I have been on Dateline. Still, he was kind to me.
Yes, he still was. Yeah. So, but what's sad is, like, my sister absolutely has refused to talk to me since my dad died. That was her response. My mother died this year. She wouldn't even answer a registered letter I sent to her to inform her, to let her know when the Zoom meeting was going to be for her memorial. So it's just, families, some handle it well, some don't. You just have to know that what you're doing is good for you, not something what someone else is going to do. But it was hard. It was stressful. you
Oh,
know.
sure.
So can I say in the meantime then? So that was in
Yeah, you can.
03.
Yeah,
You know,
I just didn't want to skip over that because I have such good memories of.
that's nice. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah, of my
and
parents.
he died not taking the blood transfusion, right?
Yes, he died because of the blood issue. He had he had an aneurysm in his aorta. It was starting to dissect. They were able to stop it. He refused blood. They found a surgeon who would come in to do it. But in the meantime, his prostate and bladder was perforated when they were trying to put the catheter in, and bled a third of his blood into his abdomen before they stabilized that. You know, waited 3 days to see if, you know, they'd have to build his blood back up. And then he got up, first time he could get up and go to the bathroom, he blew his aorta the rest of the way. But it's
Yeah.
all because, you know, anyone else would have had that operation done right away, you know, on the way to the operating room because you know, you die. John Ritter of Three's Company, same thing. You know, he made it to the hospital and it's the same thing. His aorta dissected. So it happens quickly. And you
Oh.
really can't do it without blood. But anyway, and what
Well,
was sad was that fall, that
people
was in
need to
03.
know this kind of thing. These are side notes, but they're important to hear what others go through on these situations. You know,
Right.
it's cut and dry. Everybody's got a different life, different background, and how they deal with all of this. And
Right.
you know, we're here to share information.
Right. Well, and what's sad is that fall then, my father-in-law died of the blood issue too. So
Oh,
something that I thought was absolutely ridiculous to have such a policy to say, no, I'm going to die for that blood issue. You know, you can't guarantee what's going to be in the future. You know, you can't guarantee there's going to be a resurrection. You can't guarantee anything. We don't know what the future holds. So it really hurt me bad that both I lost my father and my father-in-law due to the blood issue.
I would imagine. You know,
Yeah.
that brings it home, doesn't it?
Yes,
You know,
yes, it does.
yeah.
Yes,
You can talk about the blood issue when you're a witness, but when it doesn't happen to you and you're a believer that you
right,
do take blood, it's meaningless until it
right.
happens.
And I remember at the last hospital I practiced in, it wasn't in the practice I was in, but a young witness woman lost her life because she stood up for the blood issue. After she delivered her baby, she started hemorrhaging, you know, and they did everything they could, but, you know, the husband kept refusing the blood. And they showed, you know, the blood card that she had. So it's just people don't realize how it affects you. It really does, you know, more than why an innocent life and the poor kids that have to go without a mother the rest of their life.
Yes,
You
yes,
know, it's just for a silly policy of an organization.
yes.
Anyway,
So, well, they
yeah,
have really changed so much about that policy too that makes it easier on the witnesses. It's very subtle, though.
it is subtle because when my dad was in the hospital, you could use the erythropoietin. You
Yeah.
could use the false or the artificial blood back then, you know, but the hospital committee wasn't up on it. You know, they weren't up as much as the XJWs keeping track of things. So they didn't know that they could, you know, offer those things instead. But knowing now, being in the medical field, those things weren't enough. They cannot replace real blood and
Yeah.
the capacities that red blood cells and the plasma does for our lives. You know,
Mhm.
it's different. Okay, so back to my timeline. I'm thinking.
Okay.
Um,
Oh,
back
we
to
talked
okay,
about
so
how. Oh, you can't miss out. Come on, I want to talk about Christmas.
oh yeah, that first Christmas we had after we
Yeah, that
left.
was my first Christmas since I was 14 years old.
Yeah, we had it at the beach house. We had a huge Christmas tree. Remember that?
Yeah,
All
yeah,
decked
yeah, yeah.
out. Of course, you know when you miss Christmas, you and Joe came down, and then
Oh,
what's her name?
yeah, I forgot.
Barry's her last name now. I forgot her first name. Isn't that terrible?
Beatrice,
What?
Beatrice,
Beatrice.
and her
Yeah, she brought
kids.
her 4 kids.
Yeah,
We just had a,
and
I
she
mean,
was an ex-Bethelite. She
right.
was
She
there
was an
when
ex-Bethelite. Her husband
we
had
were
worked
there.
with my husband in the machine shop. So
Yeah,
that's how they knew, you know, we knew her from that or knew him. They were divorced at that time,
yeah.
but she was going through a divorce. But yeah, we had a wonderful time at that
Yeah,
Christmas.
we actually exchanged gifts.
Yes, yes. Made sure the kids all had gifts. That was our first Christmas party. It was
Yeah.
wonderful. But anyway, so back to that. We were, like I said, we were the type that we invited people to come to adjust to life after being in the organization. And one day a woman had been in the German Bethel, showed up, in our or in that area, the congregation's area, and found her way to our house. And she was a naturopath, had studied, especially over in Europe. They naturopaths were highly thought of and could get courses over
In
there.
Germany, right?
Yes, over in Germany.
Yeah.
And she had left. Her and her husband had divorced. She had left.
I remember that she treated Henschel. He used to
Yes.
go to Germany just for
Yes.
her
Treatments, because she did
skills.
acupuncture, she did the little needles, in the body, stuff like that. Yeah, she was interesting. But at the time, I was still working, and I was working up 90 miles away doing my 24-hour call that I was responsible for. Leaving Steve at home, thinking, trusting, we've been married 33 years, what's going on, but found out that Steve and her were having an affair. So because I read something on his computer, he left his computer open one night.
Yeah.
Yes, he was a heavy drinker. He would go to bed drunk and left his computer open, and I read what he was saying. And then next day I went and got a lawyer and divorced him. And that was
I remember the alcoholism, and I remember you telling me when everything fell apart that he was drinking before he even went to Bethel as a young man.
Well, he actually started drinking when he was at Bethel as a single person.
Aha.
He lost his brother who was 12 years younger than him, died when he was 18 because he was drunk, had been in and out of rehabs for several years. So he knew it was in his family. But as a young wife, I remember saying to him, "Why are you drinking so much?" He goes, "Oh, that's what we do at Bethel." And then when we went to Bethel, yes, I saw
That's
how
right.
all the Bethelites drank. You drank before lunch. You had a little wine before lunch, and after dinner, whatever. It was all revolved around drinking.
Absolutely, we saw it ourselves.
Right. So anyway,
so
I went through a horrible divorce.
He was an alcoholic, though.
He was an alcoholic, narcissistic, arrogant. Yes, I'm sorry to say that, but
I remember him. We would be sitting in the living room with you guys and talking, in depth about many subjects because he was very smart and you are too. So we were talking on science. He really got into.
He got into quantum physics.
Yes. And he sat there, and he'd be sitting on the floor with a little table in front of him, and he would be pouring one drink after another. But he never seemed to be drunk. Like
I called it a functioning alcoholic. You could function with that much alcohol in your system. Yeah, but no, he never got beyond his high school education. In fact, after we divorced in March of 2006, he, went on his way. And one of the things he did, he went to the Unity Church, became a lay minister in that Unity Church, because I always felt like he liked being an elder. He liked being up in front of a congregation, telling them what to think, what to do. He liked that part of being a witness, was being the elder, and that's what he became in the Unity Church. My sweet aunt, our grandmother, was Unity before she died, her mother. And so she wrote Unity and said, "How can you allow a man like this, that leaves his wife after 33 years, who's an alcoholic, how can you allow him in this church?" And they just said, "Nah," that was their reply. And she was very disillusioned with the Unity people.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he got involved in that. And then he even went to the college and taught quantum physics, did a course at the local community college, with a high school degree. And I'm thinking, yeah. I remember him he showed a check, the first check he got from the college, to our daughter, and said, "Look, I haven't gotten a check in my name in years," because I was the breadwinner, He'd never worked for anyone else all those years. If he did a little side job remodeling, it wasn't someone else paying the check. It was the homeowners.
He has psychological problems too, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Whatever comes with all of it. Anyway, because it was a nasty divorce.
Why would you say it was nasty?
It took several times negotiating, how the divorce would go. He was always saying, "This is what she's going to agree to." And my lawyer was like, "No, she's not." At least someone stood up for me instead of being the little wife that always was subservient in that, that organization. I had to learn to hang up the phone on him when he said, "This is what you're going to do." If he didn't listen, I hung up the phone. That was my prerogative. And that's okay. I learned that was okay. Before, you had to as a witness wife, you had to sit there and listen to it, to whatever they had to say, and then nod your head. Okay, I'll agree. I'll do that, type deal. So it was nasty. Our breakup was nasty. Emotionally, you can imagine I had no local community to fall back on. My family, when they didn't want to support me in what was going on. So anyway, the town was just too small for me and him to be in the same town. So I moved back to Atlanta and practiced midwifery in a really nice practice before I retired.
You were at the hospital that delivered most of the babies more babies than any hospital in the United States or something like that.
No, not really. There's other hospitals that deliver more, but it's the only private hospital.
Oh,
all the other hospitals are government subsidized. That means they have residents, they have medical students, student nurses. But this hospital was private. You had to have a private doctor, to get into this hospital, and it's the largest. They do like 18 to 20,000 deliveries a year there at that hospital. The practice I was in did, it was nothing to do 150, 200 a month in the practice that I was in.
So speaking of how many deliveries, how many babies do you think you brought into this world?
I quit counting after 5,000. I did. I thought, okay, I give up. I made it to 5,000 and
5,000 kids you're responsible for.
Yes.
Sort of.
Yes. I know.
See the light of day.
There's so many stories with that in itself, dealing with it, because there's the whole range of what could happen in delivery, the whole range of different people that you're dealing with. Happy, most of the time it was happy, but you still had to deal with stillborns. You still had to deal with, things that babies that didn't, their cells didn't develop correctly, things like that. I mean, it's rare those were, but it was still there. But the majority of the time it was happy. It was a happy environment to be in, to help women.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, and if it wasn't, can I say this? If it wasn't for you and Joe helping me through that divorce, I wouldn't have made it through. You came down and stayed with me and was absolutely my emotional support during that time.
Oh, we loved you. We still do.
Thank you.
And then we had the privilege that you came and stayed with us for a little bit. And
right before I went to Atlanta. And my sister still lives in Atlanta, the same place she's lived in for the last 23 years. I even went to her place of business, and she refused to talk to me and shooed me out of the shop that she was in. And it's just sad how that religion divides families that I could be helping her, could rely on, help her with different things. And it's just so divisive. But I made it through. Like I said.
And your kids, they did well.
They did well. Yeah, they're all doing well. And now I have 5 grandkids and having a ball with the grandkids. That is so much fun to have these grandkids.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
You didn't deliver any of them?
No, but like with my daughter, I was there for them. The midwife who delivered the first one, she was a friend of mine. And then the doctor who delivered the second one, he was a friend of mine too, because he had worked in Dothan, I worked in Dothan. And then the third one, that was because after the second one, Steve died 8 days later after the second grandbaby was born.
Yeah, so we haven't mentioned that.
So it's been 10 years ago that he died.
Yeah.
He didn't take care of himself, congestive heart failure.
Let's back up and show some of this stuff that is too sad for words. With you and trying to get something done about the situation with this woman that came from.
Oh yeah. I know. Yes. Oh yes. Back then.
So
here I'm thinking, my God,
let me lead in.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You and me are big talkers. Let me lead in. So there's a name here. I'm going to drop this name. It's Benny Sweeney.
Yes.
Benny.
He was the Alaskan overseer, branch overseer.
He was a branch overseer of Alaska for years. And Benny Sweeney and my husband pioneered together when they were young men in Dallas, Texas, before my husband went to Bethel. And so he went to Bethel 1956. And And Benny, and there were, I think, two other young men in the central congregation in Dallas back then. They were all buddies, and they were active, very active together. And they went in their different ways, some in the circuit work and so forth. So Benny ended up as the branch overseer in Alaska, and he was in Bethel for a bit, and he was really a protege of Henschel. And so, from what I remember, Henschel supported him to get this position in Alaska. And so then this gal that
That
used to
Steve,
charm
yeah,
on Steve,
yes.
tell the folks what happened.
Well, I remember her telling me at one point, she always wanted to live on the beach. She had nothing. Once she left her husband, she had nothing. And she wasn't even practicing as a naturopath anymore. And, when I figured out they were having an affair, I thought, this is crazy. How could it? I think a couple months later, she moved away and was back in good standing in the Watchtower organization. And I thought, how awful. So I wrote her husband, the branch over, they were in in Hawaii by then, because they dissolved the Alaskan branch. I wrote the Hawaiian branch.
Oh,
I wrote the
missed
United States
no,
branch.
you missed something. You missed how she got involved with Benny Sweeney.
Well, because he was in Hawaii. That's you
she
probably know that
goes
better.
to Hawaii.
Yes, she from Florida. She moved, I think, to Arizona and told some lady there that you knew that she broke up an elder and his wife, or a couple broke up. So she knew what she was doing, and then made her way back to Hawaii.
Okay, so she goes to Hawaii, and the branch is dissolved in Alaska. And Benny Sweeney's wife died, because I remember when that happened.
Yes.
And so he's in Hawaii, and this female.
Can we say floozy? So she gets involved with him, and he marries her.
Yeah.
And is accepted. And he was in the Hawaiian branch at that time.
Yeah.
So I wrote the Hawaiian branch. I wrote the United States branch. I wrote Steve Lett, because we used to do pre-convention work with him and Sue, and he knew us from his parents pioneering with us. I wrote our old buddy Gary Bro, because he was in the service department. And
yeah, he's part of the service department, I think.
Yes, because Gary, he was such good friends with us that when Steve would give a circuit assembly talk one time, when my first baby was sick and I couldn't go, he made sure he called me and said, "What an excellent talk. You really missed a good, talk by Steve." So they were close friends of ours at one point. So I wrote at least 4 letters to everyone. Never heard a thing back to say, this is what you're letting back in the organization, this type of woman, and not only just in the congregation, but high up in the organization.
This depends who you are, huh?
Exactly. It's not what you know, but who you know.
Yeah. Well, while she was married to Benny Sweeney, and that was a number of years, he died.
Yeah. So I don't know what's happened to her.
Yeah.
Could care less.
So here
I used to say she turned into my best friend. Because she got the narcissistic, alcoholic, arrogant person out of my life.
Yeah. And then he went with he found a woman in Florida
at the Unity Church. Yeah,
Steve did. Yeah,
yes, at the Unity Church.
Backed up with her.
Yeah, they were living together.
All I thought of was how the mighty have fallen.
Yes.
So, and the brotherhood it's a surface. It's a surface thing.
Right.
I always say the writers portrayed a world that really never existed.
Exactly. It was all a facade. It was all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
You saw what you wanted to see.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I feel very fortunate that, yes, throughout all those years, I was the submissive little wife, played the little game in the organization, but I made sure that I was okay. I was able to continue working. I could provide for myself. Some sisters don't have that. If their husbands divorce them, they start in scratch, or they're working at minimum wage, and you can't make a living on minimum wage. So I always tell people who leave the organization, if you wanted an education, I don't care how old you are, go get it.
Yeah.
Do something to
I was
improve yourself.
59 when I went to college.
See,
Yeah.
do something to improve
Yeah, and I
yourself.
got a scholarship. I mean, if I
Yeah.
could do it, anybody could do it.
Right. And
Yeah,
you meet people that way, and plus
yeah,
you
I
might,
did. I
better your
did.
education,
Uh-huh.
you
It was
start
like,
your new community.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
for sure.
And so, how long was Steve alive before he died? And he was,
After the divorce,
yeah,
he only lived 8 years more.
8 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
He was young, and he was in his mid 60s when he died. I
I,
consider that young now.
oh, yes. Oh, that is young, yes. He died in 2014, right?
Yes, in
Yeah.
January of 2014. Yes.
And could you say that alcohol played a part in that? Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. His
What did
yes.
one lawyer say about Steve? Was
Well,
interesting.
the lawyer I got, because he was at my side, and we had to go through several arbitrations. Is that what it is when you have to negotiate what your settlement's going to be? Even had to get a third lawyer, his lawyer, my lawyer, and a third lawyer had to go through this. He couldn't believe how Steve, after 8 hours of negotiating, we agreed to go back to another time, and we started right back at square one. Whatever he agreed on after 8 hours, he totally forgot about, wiped out, and said, no, this is what she's going to agree to. So he said, afterwards, when it was all done, that he said he only worried about one other woman in his career because he was worried the men would go after and kill them. He had gotten that type of feeling from Steve, that he wasn't going to just let this die. He was going to, get what he wanted or whatever.
Hmm.
So
Something else. He said he thought Steve was pretty arrogant, didn't he?
yes, yes. In fact, one of the, through our years, I remember one time in Marietta, I took him to a counselor. One of the sisters in our congregation was a psych nurse, and I asked her who she would refer, and I took him to him. And when I went back the second time, because Steve didn't want to go back, he said to me, "That is the most arrogant man I've ever talked to in my life."
Mm-hmm.
Still didn't pick up. I was still a submissive wife, still went along with everything, right? Until everything hits you over the head, until you have to come to reality. Was it an adjustment after we went through a divorce? Absolutely. Therapy helped me greatly. I found
Oh,
a
yes.
therapist.
Let's hear about it.
I was going to say, I found a therapist. In fact, my lawyer recommended her, and she was a social worker, and really was good about dealing with people who are coming out of cults. Because she said, "Why don't you go to AA?" Because most, or the what it is, Al-Anon, for people, codependents, or that type of thing. I went to one meeting and said, no, this is group thought, and I can't do group thought because I was in a religion that everything was group thought. Y'all, thought alike. That I couldn't do that. So she was very helpful. In fact, I think I went to her for almost 2 years to help work on little things one step at a time, and that helped tremendously. And even at work, because by then I had moved to Atlanta, I would tell coworkers, I don't know how to do these birthday things. Let me know. Or what about Christmas? I was in a cult. I don't know how to take, what's the usual standard of behavior. And they're very helpful. They're very sympathetic and said, "Oh, let's show you. This is what we do, or this is what you can do, or you can decide what you want to do." It was helpful to just open up and be humble and tell people where you came from.
Yeah. After living in an us versus them world,
Mm.
uh-huh,
Yeah.
it's difficult to learn to trust people, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I think that's the hardest thing. Here I lost a way of life that was very black and white. It was either us, and then you didn't trust that people out in the world. I had to realize, first of all, there's no such thing as the world. We're all mankind. There's not a
Mm-hmm.
black and white separation, and that feelings or things I had to learn was how to trust, what to look for real trust in other people. You don't get to develop that as a witness growing up. You were in the safety of this little cocoon of the Watchtower Society. You had ready-made friends. You didn't know how to pick and choose. You had
Yeah.
to stay within that community.
Yeah.
Whereas now, it was the biggest thing I remember was one time I was on a chat room with Alan Thalbacher and saying to him, when are these sayings in my head? All the scriptures that would come to mind. If this happens, you think this way. If that happens, he goes, give yourself at least 2 years to get rid of all the propaganda that's in your head. Because that's what I started viewing it as, is that's their way of making us think, what's going on. So, and then I was like, no, I want to get rid of it today. I don't want this in my head. But he was very good. And there was a lot of other ex-witnesses that were very good about being supportive as you leave to help you, And the biggest thing was making decisions for myself, because the decisions were made for us all the time in the Watchtower.
Yes.
You don't realize it. My
Yes.
brother even today says, oh, I got to find out what the elders think about this. And I'm thinking, you've got to, you're an old man now. Why can't you think for yourself? It's okay to think for yourself. It's okay to make your own decisions. That to me is what teenagerhood was about. When as teenagers, we learned our boundaries, or you did if you weren't raised in a cult-like situation. And then as an adult, you made your own decisions. Whereas witnesses don't make their own decisions. They make little decisions, what assembly we're going to go to, or, that
Oh,
type of
yeah.
thing, but nothing life-changing, life
Right.
supporting, that who you really are as a person, what
Yeah.
your beliefs are. So,
And they're not partners. Married
No.
witnesses aren't partners.
no.
Yeah. We were, Joe and I were, because both of us really weren't raised as witnesses. So
And you're a rarity. Out of all the ex-witnesses I've come across, a lot of times, yes, the marriages don't last because they weren't built on what real love is.
Mhm.
They were just built on maybe sexual needs, horny teenagers, whatever it was. But
Or what the Watchtower says.
Or what the Watchtower says, and had the goal of, going out in service or pioneering or whatever, that follows apart. And then, where are they? What did they got to live? And it's hard. It's a big adjustment. Yes, it's a lot of work on yourself to be able to survive after you leave the Watchtower. But it's worth it because you're so free like you never would have believed before.
Someone called me today and told me, amongst other things, that a study Watchtower from July that they're studying right around the past week or two or whatever. I'm not sure what. I haven't seen it. I'll put it this way. But the person told me that there's instructions there on masturbation. They brought that up again. And then it talks about that, how women should, how they should use this or shouldn't use this. And it's information. I'm not saying the information is wrong or right. It's just enough is enough.
Yeah. Yeah, they're in your bedroom, aren't they? Yes. And you can imagine being an advanced registered nurse practitioner and dealing with GYN issues and females all my life and birth. I can get in the nitty-gritty about
yeah.
I know I used to embarrass you a lot with what I could bring up off the tip of my tongue. But yes, they get into your bedroom. I mean, it's like, give me a break. Let adults make their own decisions.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Everybody's so different on every issue. I mean, they can't even agree on raising children.
Right. Right.
And then to get it, like you said, they get in the bedroom. And somebody, John Marciano on the chat here comment says, masturbating leads to demons.
Where are they? Show me.
Harry Paloyan, the Wake editor, I don't know how we got into this discussion, but he told me one day that he did not agree with the Watchtower's policy. And here he was at Bethel 40 years at that time, and he's long dead now, died in 2016. And he said, I don't agree with the society's policy. They should stay out of the bedroom. He had a wonderful, wonderful wife, and they were very happy. But he said, I don't agree with it. I wish that they would stop this. So even within, if you didn't have power or there wasn't enough lawsuits over it, see, they don't change anything unless you give a lawsuit, like they did on the oral sex. Remember?
Yes.
The oral sex.
Yes.
Yeah, well, women were getting beaten to a pulp. One had a broken leg. I think one died because of being beaten by their husbands over oral sex. And their husbands were converts. No. The women were converts and the husbands were not.
Yeah.
So the society changed. It didn't change because God moved them to change. The lawsuit moved them to change.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's a shame is that all the lawsuits with child abuse, they still haven't changed their policy.
Very, very little. They're only changing for the how it looks to the authorities, to the in court. They say one thing and they quote their manual, and the manual says that you can. The elders manual says you in the 12th chapter, I believe it is, that you can associate with your relatives. Just don't talk about spiritual things. And who knows that? And even if they did, they'd be scared to death to do it because, put that in there so they can present it to the in court.
Authorities.
Yeah.
Right. Who's ever investigating them. Yeah. I know for the longest time, my brother, who we were both at Bethel at the same time, believe it or not, he was kind of astounded that I would know things going on at Bethel after I left the organization that eventually came out. It was like, how do you know these things? How do you know this is coming up? It's like, I'm not going to tell you my source, but look into the organization. He's the only one I gave Crisis of Conscience to. He read it, claims he read it, gave it back to me and say, thanks. I know why Ray got this fellowship now. And that's it.
Yeah.
So everyone's on their own path, that's why.
Different strokes for different folks.
Right. That's why I say, because I remember going as a little kid, knocking on the doors, going door to door, conducting Bible studies. And now my motto is, I'm no one's teacher. There's no black and white in the world. I see a lot of gray.
Yeah, we were teachers. And I like that expression that you say, I'm no one's teacher. Let them
I'm not going to tell them how to live their life, what to believe, There's no concrete answers out there. We're all human beings with thousands of years of, information and human history
and genetics.
And genetics. And who's to say, what? Yes, there are some hardcore black and white things like murder.
Breaking the law.
Breaking the law. There are some human laws that very much need to be obeyed, but there's a lot of gray areas.
Yeah.
Would I tell her sister what length her skirt should be anymore? Or she can wear pantsuits now? Just the silliness of a controlling situation. I think it's silly. Yeah. Again, not making a decision. You can decide what pantsuit you want, but you're not making a decision what really to wear in your life to really express yourself.
Yeah, if somebody would have said, in 6 years or so, that women in the organization are going to be able to wear pants, that person would have got disfellowship for spreading a lie. And so,
well, I remember back in Missouri in that congregation we were there, I did wear pants one time out in service because it was cold. We had 2 feet of snow on the ground, and who wants to wear a skirt with cold air going up? And it was like minus 20 degrees. And the circuit over said to me, because we were ex-Bethelites, he goes, did someone tell you could wear pants? I said, it's cold out. Why can't I wear pants? And he dropped it. Because like I said, we were in that congregation thinking the rules in New York will eventually come down to all these congregations and be more friendly or, lenient or be more human-like instead of following such rigid rules. But it never did.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of changes, and those who remain in the organization, they seem to adapt, and it is their community. So
right,
and
if and I agree, it is nice to have a community.
Yeah,
but with false ideas of the future, I think of all the lives that could have gone to education, and education of some sort. Who knows what they would have developed in this world, or what they would have done with their lives instead of waiting and waiting and waiting for a system to end and God to deliver them from this type of world. It's really a sad waiting life that they live.
Somebody asked a question here on the right that said, I
don't see those. Where are those at? I don't
up on the top, I don't know if you see, it says private.
No, I don't see anything.
Comments. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see anything.
I don't know why that I have that.
Okay, well, just ask the questions. Let me
okay,
see what you got.
What do you know about Steve Lett now?
I know he's a member of the governing body,
but he became a member of the anointed as a boy
in the late 60s, yes, or 70s.
Quite independent, and he had a lot of money behind him.
I was going to say, remember that his dad was a millionaire.
Yeah.
So let's connect some of these dots here.
You know that you mentioned someone else too. Before. Oh, I know. Let's talk about John Quissell.
Oh, John Quissell. Well, John he was in Bethel in the 60s, and came back to the St. Louis area. And him and Gary Bro were good friends. In fact, I
And Gary
remember.
Bro is over the service department now. I
Right,
believe he
right.
is.
Gary and Ruby were good friends with John. I think they started a cleaning business together because they came out pioneering, wanting to pioneer.
And
And
Mark
I'm
Quissell, his brother, is at Bethel now.
still at Bethel. In fact, he went in 72, and he's been there since 72. But I know that John Quistell subsidized the Bros to be able to stay in circuit work and to stay at Bethel. You can't be poor little Bethelites with the type of lifestyle that you really want to lead, even up there at Bethel. So I'm sure he has subsidized. In fact, I think Gary probably half owned the business that he had, the cleaning business he had. And John Quistell was a man that got to be the district overseer for our area, not the district overseer, but I mean the district assembly overseer.
Okay.
So he organized all that.
Mhm.
And then it found out when he finally did marry, he wasn't married for the longest time. His wife found him cheating with worldly women on the side for years. So he was disfellowshipped, removed. That was a big scandal in the area. In fact, when he was reinstated, that was a big deal. Like my brother told me, can you believe he's back in that religion again? And yet he's someone that I know he gave the book Crisis of Conscience to a woman that I met in Atlanta who used to live in St. Louis and said, this is what John gave me. And she's no longer a witness. And yet here this guy stayed with, had this business where all his employees were witnesses and subsidized Gary Bro. And, I just find it's interesting that they're just snakes in the grass everywhere,
Well,
even in that organization.
we never know what goes on behind closed doors, and people are of all sorts. And the Watchtower people in the writing department, they recognize that. It's not that they don't.
Okay.
And they try to handle it all. You can't handle human race. You just
Right.
can't.
You can't handle human beings. We're
Yeah.
humans with our foibles and everything.
That's
Yes.
right. And they
Yes.
want to do that.
Yeah.
So it just makes for more and more problems in the congregation, and more hatred between people. And we don't have any solutions for that. They make their choices to stay. That's fine, as long as they don't break the law.
Right. But I remember with Steve talking about Steve Lett, I remember a lot of people don't like the way he talks. First of all, he was from Alabama, and his daddy kind of talked like that too. His mother was not deaf. Jean was the sweetest thing. She was not deaf. So I don't know why he talks like that.
Oh, Steve, we're not making fun of you. You just have a very interesting way to talk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once you meet him, you can't forget it.
Somebody said, Yvonne said, then Lett's niece left because it was her brother. She no longer was in the Watchtower. I don't know what that is.
Lett's niece? Yeah.
Yeah.
His brother, Tim, and I forgot his brother's wife's name. I remember meeting them. They stayed back in Alabama, and they never full-time pioneered or anything. They had a family, they just wanted a family life. So maybe from his brother's kids, maybe she, that's the niece they're talking about that left the organization. Who knows? I know Mark and Jean died several years ago.
Yeah. Oh, they'd be over 100 now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they were definitely older.
So let's because we're going to open up this. If there are anybody out there listening who has a question, let's talk about the major bullet points that we have.
Okay.
That. Let's talk about
the first. I was going to say the first thing I like to tell people who ever contacted me leaving is be patient with yourself. Realize that emotionally we were stunned as a pre-teenager. We didn't have the freedom to know how to make decisions for ourselves, and take the time to explore without, doing things illegal. Realize that you're going to go crazy a little bit, as teenagers do in their teen years, before you settle down and really have a core belief system. what you think you need to do for your rest of your life, or what right or wrong. And then realizing there's no dictation out there except for some basic man's laws, like not to murder, not to, kill, not to steal, the basic things. So be patient with yourselves. Also, another thing I was going to say is that when people contacted me, I used to be more involved with the XJW world, is I had a list of books. I was the type that if I was that deep in the organization and had Bible studies and convinced people that this was the truth, I read everything I could get my hands on about the witness history.
Yes,
Coral Olof's book on why
Yeah,
607
the
is
book.
not the correct
Yeah.
date, things like that.
Give us some There's some names of books.
And what's his name? Oh, your friend in Canada, the professor
Penton.
His books that he'd written. I read a sociologist's book about true believers, comparing. He knew back in the 50s that communism was going to fall and gave the reason for it, because he says anytime you have this type of organization, you have the carrot. People get busy with busy work, and yet you're so busy trying to catch that carrot. And for us, the witnesses, with this new system, we got busy with all these meetings, going to service, studying the Bible, that we didn't sit down and really look at what was happening to our lives. Whereas, because of the dangling carrot there. So again, that's a good book to read, by Eric Hoffer. Hoffer? Yeah, I think it is. The True Believers, that name. Just a lot of good books that way of, helping me deal with that. It's been so long since I pulled up my reading list, I forgot everything that's on it. Besides Crisis of Conscience.
You don't need it now anyway.
Yeah, you do go on, you have a life, and I'm glad that I was able to have a life, and I'm still enjoying my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, the disappointing thing is that people in the years ago, and especially the Protestant Reformation, they were looking at primitive Christianity, and it wasn't new with Russell. This was a repeat, repeat. Had different issues, important things that were known in those years that they were struggling with. And of course, with Russell's administration, there was a certain administration. And then you had the repeat of the administration, which really was Rutherford, but it was a military sort of political leaning of him that made the organization like it was, with the theocracy and all.
Right.
Yeah, and then he had Norris Commercial, more of a commercial organization, and so when you find out all of that, if you like it, stay with it. So we're not condemning that. We've all had interesting lives, and we hope that no more suicides over leaving the organization. But it's that shunning. That's such
right. I always said the Watchtower, they can be fined if, one, they give up the blood policy, give up the shunning policy, and correct their child abuse policy. They'll just be another religion. Who cares? It won't be a harmful religion that it is now, that causes these, suicides, or causes deaths because of the blood issue, or harming people because of the sex abuse that goes on in it.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things that came to light to me when I was leaving, and I can't remember how many years it took for me to realize, because as witnesses, we didn't say we were in a cult. We weren't in a cult, but until you leave a cult, do you realize you're in a cult? To how many rules and regulations they had, and your mind was trapped to what they had to say.
Yes. Good advice from someone who has seen it all, put it in practice, and they getting over the heartbreak. But you came out a real winner, because you have 3 absolutely wonderful, beautiful children, and married, happy, and with kids. And you make your own decisions for your life as a single woman. You are not striving to be a perfect JW woman anymore. You're just striving to be a perfect woman.
No, that ship has sailed.
No. We have a lot of fun, we women, since we're out of this thing. and nobody watches us and condemns us for saying this or that.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's like me hearing about this article on masturbation. You know, I can think whatever I want to think, and you know,
Right.
I can
Right.
read whatever I want to read, which is not particularly that, but
Yeah, not you, Barbara, but yeah, so there's no running ahead of the organization.
Yeah,
Remember
yeah.
how you had to be reprimanded for that? Don't
yeah.
just wait on Jehovah, all that. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Well, if we could get thank you, Joy, and if we could
You're
get
welcome. Thank you.
Rick and to play our Toady Films. Our Toady Films is this is the child of Richard Thrift Gemmell, okay, and he's the one that is into music, and then he makes these horror films. So Rick was going to play this one song that I thought exemplified you and me, the wisdom
Okay.
of the ages.
Okay,
All
I'd
right,
love to hear it.
yeah, so I can play the song, and we'll try
Okay.
to get as clear as we can. The sound quality, it's hard to really hear the lyrics, but listen closely, and perhaps you can hear them. But maybe after the song is played, we'll play about half of it, and after the song is played, maybe you can make some comments, Barbara.
And hear from others who have comments.
Okay, let's play the song right now. So hold on. Let me
Okay.
make sure that it's all clipped up. It's ready to go. So let me put my mic nice and close here. This is the song.
Listen to the words of the ancient ones, secrets whispered in the morning sun. Follow the wisdom your ancestors spun. Feel the weight of ages just begun. Learn to love the echoes from the past. Find your roots and make the moments last. In the silence where the shadows cast, words of wisdom will you grasp. Grow in peace and let your heart be free, shaped by time and endless memory. In the quiet where the soul can see truth and love in unity. Every step a part of history. The sacred mystery. Feel the common nature symphony. Wisdom song eternally. Hear the tales of triumph and of pain. All that's lost and all there is to gain. Walk the path where ancient feet have lain. And this step you'll never walk in vain. Grow in peace and let your heart be free, shaped by time and endless memory. In the quiet where the soul can see truth and love in unity. Every step a part of history, every breath a sacred mystery. Feel the calm in nature's symphony, wisdom song eternally in vain.
Well, could you hear it all right, Barbara?
Parts of it was loud and then soft and loud and soft, but we could hear. We'd like to have heard it clearer, and it's On the comments, it said, "Are Toady Films at 587 Maverick Me?" I don't know what that all is. And but it is Richard Thrift and his associates, the international associates that they have. They came together with that, and they also have a list of their music, a link, and I sent that to you. The link to a lot of their music.
That's great. I would dance to it. One thing I got into after I left that organization was West Coast swing dancing, and the dance community was wonderful. You know, and that is a beat that I would dance West Coast swing to. I love that song.
Yeah, and yes, and I agree. Dancing is wonderful. Joe and I dance we ballroom dance in our living room, and we have enjoyed that for years and years and years. So you find a place for yourself. Mm-hmm. It's not perfect, nope. But happiness is out there. It's a matter of a state of mind. And of course, if your health is bad, then that doesn't help you. But you know, there's the negatives and there's the positives.
Right. So, right. You can you don't have to be a Pollyanna, but you can look realistic at life.
That's right.
And still find happiness, still find joy in what you're doing, or at least
look
joy
what Rick
in
is
what you're not doing.
You know, Rick is doing, yes, and you're going on with your life. Rick is helping with people to understand more about the Watchtower. I'm doing my little thing here and we're only doing this to share information so others can have a happy life.
Yes, and to realize there is life after the Watchtower.
Yeah, there is. Mm-hmm. So Rick, want to turn it? Is there any questions?
Well, let's open up the lines. Let's see if we can get some people to come on in and say hello to Joy. Let's go. Let's open the lines. It's *6 on your telephone pad. Boy, you heard her story. She really has a lot to talk about. You heard a lot here tonight. So why don't you ask, maybe you know Joy, maybe you know some of the people she knows. So go ahead, don't be bashful. Go ahead and speak up. I'd love to hear from you. They would too. I'll kind of be the icebreaker here and come in and talk to Joy for a little bit. Joy, what part of Illinois, if you don't mind me asking, were you in?
At the western part, it's just south of Quincy, Illinois, that first little congregation we pioneered in for 2.5 years. And then we were in the northeast part of Missouri, another little small congregation once we left Bethel.
Well, it's interesting because I'm pretty familiar with Illinois. In fact, my wife, I'm from Massachusetts, but my wife lived in Illinois. She lived in a town a city is called Naperville. And it's southwest of Chicago.
Oh yeah, way up north. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so Illinois is a big state, not like Massachusetts.
It's a very long state.
it has a lot of witnesses. In Illinois.
History with the witnesses. You remember in Springfield during the 40s where they got tarred and feathered there?
Yes.
Springfield, Illinois.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were tarred and feathered there. They were tarred and feathered down in Tampa, Florida. But, you know, the thing I find with the witnesses in Illinois, I met my wife, actually. She was living in Illinois, and she called in to the Six Screens one night, like people calling in tonight. Uh-huh. And so I met her, and she was a real avid listener to the Six Screens. And she says, Rick, I want to come. I want to come there and work for the Six Screens. I says, well, that's awful nice. You want to do that? She says, I'll even work for nothing, she said.
And she is now. I
said, well, that'd be slave. This is before I really even had a romantic relationship.
I know, I'm just teasing you.
She won a contest that we were doing on the Six Screens, and she called in and she says, Rick, I listened to the Six Screens. She said, but there's no apostates in Illinois. She says, I can't find any apostates out here. So she says, I'd like to come and work for you. I'll come up to Massachusetts. I says, well, we'll see what happens with that. So she was really very, moving forward with all of this. She really loved the Six Screens. I mean, there wasn't any romantic connection here at this point. So, anyways, I gave her a job to do. I set up what we call the Six Screens hotline call, and she was handling that. And people would call in that didn't want to talk on the radio program we do live on the air, so they would call in and talk to her privately. And I couldn't believe it. She was getting upwards of 10 calls a day
Wow.
from ex-witness. Yeah, this is 10 years ago. This was all going on.
20 years ago was BRCI in Chicago. That was
Yeah.
a big apostate group.
Well, I tell everybody now, I say, hey, look it. I'm going to tell you, just hang in there. There's going to be a lot of apostates coming to your neck of the woods. Seriously. There's so many people leaving the watch now, as we know. So all of a sudden, it's happening. Illinois is getting to be a lot of apostates. We're still working on Tennessee. We,
There weren't that many to start with, so.
I think they're all over. I think that's a dying organization.
The Baptists, the Southern Baptists, have a big stronghold in Tennessee, and they have a huge child abuse problem, and they're trying to deal with it. So we understand what we're up against and what they're going through, but they're not doing too good of a job like the Watchtower is on the changing policies. From what I gather, I'm not an expert on it. I don't make claims to be. Also, we have Church of Christ. Church of Christ is very strong in this area. And so we dealt with them going door to door. But that's Tennessee. And locally, this is a very business. This South Central Tennessee has a lot of science stuff and also government businesses and whatever. So you have a lot of smart people living in the area. And I liked that when I was a witness and I went door to door, I actually talked to not the usual person who didn't know anything about religion, generally speaking, but you have great conversations. So that was a plus. And they didn't come into the witnesses, though. They're only witnesses are move-ins for years and years. The only witnesses in our part of Tennessee were move-ins.
Well, because people that are intelligent know critical thinking.
Yeah.
Barbara, I see Yvonne, who was in the chat room there on YouTube.
Yeah.
She's wondering, she says, if I know how many witnesses have left in the last year. There's no way really of knowing. But Barbara, I have to say that right now, we know there was 2 years really that two areas or two times in history that Watchtower lost 250,000 people. And one was back when Rutherford took over back in the 20s after Russell died. Then Rutherford came in, and so many people left back then, upwards of 250,000. And then we know that in 1975, 250,000 left. But I'm going to tell you now, they might not be leaving totally, but they are PMOs.
Yes.
And there's millions of PMOs, millions of witnesses that don't believe it, but are just going to the meetings so they don't get disfellowshipped and have shun come upon them. So
lose their community. Yes.
Yeah, I'd say there's more people right now, Joy, than ever before. I'm going to go on the record to say, I'll tell you what, I've had people calling to the Six Screens here, and people are estimating upwards of 4 million PMOs. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Do you think that could be the case, Barbara and Joy?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I do. The number that during the growth period in the late 80s, the number that the Watchtower gave out to the press was 8 million witnesses. And then they would up it a little bit in the 90s. They stick with that, and they let the press or anybody who wants to know how many witnesses were, they let them think of that figure. They give them the standard figure from the 80s, over 8 million. So you see it. You see it in these newspaper articles that went out there during the pandemic that the Watchtower was putting out about Jehovah's Witnesses, and these paid advertisements about Jehovah's Witnesses. Of course, people didn't know they were paid. They thought it was news. And but you can't have such empty buildings and so many buildings sold and have that figure when everything was increasing, and then all of a sudden it started going backwards. And they just leave it alone. They don't touch that figure. And so the press picks up that figure over and over again. But you can't have buildings that are half empty for conventions and all the buildings, the Kingdom Hall sold. You're bringing together other groups. So it looks good in one Kingdom Hall. It looks full, but it's made up of maybe 3 congregations. I have people call me who are PMOs that tell me different things like that about their own congregation where they are attending. And it isn't what it appears to be. So, but that's whatever the figure is. And if they all don't leave, that's their business. You know, we have.
We've got 217. Come on. Say hello to Barbara. Say hello to Joy. 217. You're on with us.
Hello.
Howdy.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I just wanted to call in. I am from Quincy, Illinois.
Hey, my parents lived in Quincy, Illinois.
I knew your mom and dad.
Yes.
We have left the organization. Oh, it's been about 10 years now.
Good for you.
And we called you several years back, my husband and I, and talked with you. You probably don't remember that, but
well, I remember a couple.
I remember your family well. Grew up with your dad. Was they moved to? Let's see, where's your mom at? She's in Mobile now, isn't she?
They went to Fairhope,
yes. So. Yes, I was just so excited to see you on here. This is so nice. But yeah, we grew up in Quincy, Illinois, and I remember you when you were there.
Yes, we were across the river in Canton, Missouri. My husband and I were across the river in Canton, Missouri. Yes.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Joy. Could you come closer to the computer?
Oh, I said my husband and I were across the river in Canton, Missouri when my parents were over in Quincy, Illinois. They moved there in 1974 to help where the need was great. Mm-hmm. And stayed there till 1991. They were there a while.
Mm-hmm. Yes. In fact, we first met them. He came as a substitute circuit overseer.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's been quite a while back. And then in fact, I graduated with your brother.
Jeff.
And we had a graduation party and everything else. So, yeah, so that was, I just had to call in and say hello to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to call her again.
Yeah. Yes, I will. Well, I'll let you go. I just wanted to call in and say hello.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that was nice.
Yeah.
That was nice hearing from someone that knows your mom and dad from Illinois. Yeah. We've been getting a lot of people calling in from Illinois lately. I think that's gaining. Well, there's a lot of people in Illinois, first of all. But, you know, I'm going to tell you, and you girls know it as well as I do, people are waking up. They're smelling the coffee. The internet is the great equalizer. There's no way that people are going to continue along and go along with all these new teachings. I'm reading here tonight. I'm getting ready to do the news. And it looks like they're getting ready to even dump a bunch of circuit overseers. At least
I heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah, at least I guess they're doing it over in Europe. And it looks like it could come here. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's the one thing I have to tell you, the Watchtower, and you guys know it as well, that in Ireland, I read that business publication. It would be like the Wall Street Journal in America, but it was a business publication claiming the Watchtower owns $15 billion. Their assets are $15 billion. And, people are seeing this, even the witnesses. What would you think? What would you think if you were a witness and you heard about this? Geez, you'd be saying, why do they need my money? Kids.
Exactly.
Yeah, why are they going up every month on the charge to be at the Kingdom Hall? Why are they going up from $1,000 in one congregation to $1,500 for that congregation? And there's 3 of them in that one building. So why do they need it? All of this money, when the French paid for their own buildings at one time. Something doesn't smell right.
You don't know you're in a cult until you leave one.
Yeah, it's good thought, Joy. So Rick, you're going to talk about the Irish group tonight?
Well, I talked about that. I talked about it a couple of weeks ago, but now I'm also talking here tonight. What's going on in China with the witnesses?
Oh, yeah, right. Singapore, right? Isn't it?
Yes, I didn't realize that Jehovah's Witnesses had a whole lot of property. I guess.
No. This is the way I understand it. Last year, and that's the Korean ex-witnesses told me. Hong Kong, that's what it is, in Hong Kong, and they owned the picture that that came out about these big tall buildings. The Society's branch in Hong Kong was 2 floors, huge floors. They owned those floors in those giant buildings, and they were up for sale, and that's what was sold just recently. So
Right.
the Hong Kong branch is actually gone, but it's kind of located with the South Korean branch.
Right. Now, the thing is, the reason why they're selling, according to the article I'm reading out of a business publication in China, the reason why they're selling is the Chinese property. It's coming back a little bit.
Yes.
For years, it was very depressed. So the Watchtower, they're in a real estate business. So they're going to push the button right now and say, let's get as much as we possibly can. Well, Barbara, they're a big real estate company. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and with the new guy, the new governing body member who's got all this expertise on real estate, he's a great advisor. I wonder if he gets the allowance every month from the society.
I'm sure he does. No,
$150. I don't know what it is now. It's $100 when we left.
Well, his name is Jody Jadell.
Yeah.
And he may be getting some stipend amount from the Watchtower, but he's a big time real estate tycoon.
Yeah.
Now he's on the governing body. This guy, I'm sure, is a multi-millionaire. I'm
but
sure
he's a spiritual multi-millionaire because they only put spiritual men on the governing body, right?
Are you still drinking the Kool-Aid, Barbara?
Well, what's of interest with Jody Jadell, the new governing body member, is all of a sudden he becomes anointed. I mean, how does this happen? I mean, how convenient would that be, right?
Just like Steve Lett.
Steve Lett did it,
Yeah.
And kind of wonder too, don't you? Steve Lett's parents being very, very, very wealthy, and then everything eventually goes his way, and you kind of wonder about the money, right?
Right, the background.
Yeah.
You'll never know about. Yes.
Callers want to come in. 717. Is that you, Dallas? 717. Come on.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to say hi, Barbara.
Howdy.
And hi, Joy.
Hi.
Hi, Joy. I just wanted to compliment you. I enjoyed your story and enjoy your show, Barbara, too.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet you got a story to tell.
I think this is the first time I met you, Barb, but I'm happy. I wanted to meet you and thought didn't want to miss your part. And I agree that there is a big decline.
Seems that way.
Well, Dallas, thank you, Dallas. Always good to hear from Dallas. Now, don't you be a stranger. You come back again.
Yeah.
Let's go to 614. 614, Michael, come on.
Hey Rick, how you doing? It might be off the subject, but I heard you talk about 1975 in Tennessee, and that's in 1973. That's when I talked to Fred France personally, and I've always wanted to ask Barbara. I talked to him about the 1975 date and told him that his calculations were wrong, and I didn't think it was coming at that time. And I got the impression that he didn't think so either. So I always wanted to ask Barbara this question, since she knew him. Did he actually believe the 1975 date, or did he just get caught with it?
Well, Joy mentioned a little bit about that too before, but as he got closer and closer, he was doubting it. Yeah.
Can I make a comment about the Gilead graduation in 75 or 76? We were up there then. Freddie Franz was given the main talk and said, if it doesn't come in 75, we don't have another date till the end of the 1,000 years, but don't we live a good life? And that was a crack for me that, oh my goodness, if they don't know when Armageddon's coming and preaching that for years, what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Freddie didn't believe it either.
No. And they lost 500,000. That figure was given to me by someone, a senior writer. He said they lost 500,000 witnesses on the 1975 fiasco, and he said Freddie got rewarded. That's what he told Lloyd Berry. He said, "You all rewarded him." He said, when we lost all that, it made him want to. Well, that's when he became president.
Right, he was already one of the governing body members.
I mean, right.
That's when Noor died and he became president. Yeah. Right.
He was, but he was made president. He said,
right.
That's what you did. You rewarded him and we lost all those people. So they knew they were up a creek without a paddle there towards the end.
Yeah, I felt that they knew before 1975.
Oh yeah.
Who's an elder? He's still, and we talk sensibly together. And I actually told him last week. Mark, he didn't believe it was coming in 75, and I talked to him in 1973. And Mark, who was in Bethel, he was in Bethel and knew Fred France too. He said, he believed it, Michael. He believed it. He really believed it. But I'm looking at this guy face to face, and I said, I don't think he believed it.
Well, I talked to the reporter that did the article when Freddie Franz was made president, and that man was the associate, I believe, Newsweek. He was a Newsweek religion editor. And he told me he spent 1 hour with Freddie Franz for that article. And when he came away from that interview, he said, that man is certifiably insane.
That's good. Yeah. Thank you for letting me ask that. I've always appreciated your comments.
Well, I have a good memory. I have a memory for detail, and so, but I don't use it to get back at people. I use what I know to help people to see the reality, and as I saw it, and I wasn't grabbing on to leaving the organization. I left over child abuse, not over dogma. And when my son said we haven't talked to him or seen him since 2002 or 3, something like that. Anyway, in 2007, we get a email from him, and he sends it to me, of course, because my husband didn't have his own email then. And he said, we're discussing your beliefs. Your dad's beliefs. And he said, we have company, we have guests, and we'd like to know your beliefs since you left the organization. And I wrote him back and I said, I left the organization over child abuse, not over my beliefs. because I really did kind of believe that they had great information from the Bible when I left the organization. When I took a stand in 96, 97, I was still sort of a believer. And but it was the child abuse. I could not support any organization that wasn't doing the right thing on behalf of all of this mess. I worked with it for probably at that time 7 years, and so it is. So you know, I that's why I don't get into arguments over belief to this day. You know, because everybody, it's subjective. That's the whole point. So, but you can't be subjective over child abuse. I don't talk religion. I don't talk. You believe what you want to believe. It's your responsibility. If it is a responsibility. So, but I'm not going to associate. Never ever going to support an organization or a group of people that harm. Never.
Innocent children, yes.
Children. And Joy is a woman brought in this world all those thousands of kids. You know where she stands.
Barbara, I have to ask you this before I hang up.
Okay.
You studied the Bible and you went door to door with people and talked to them about the kingdom.
Yes.
Don't you believe in Jesus Christ, that he died for your sins?
Remember,
That sounds like a religious question.
It's a religious question. See, I don't answer religious questions. I made them a long time ago because I was getting in arguments with people on the phone early on. They called me at home after date time. I said, no, more of this. Why should you care what I believe? You know, $2.50 of my belief will get you on the subway. What difference does it make?
Barbara, the reason I care is because I care about you.
Well, I care about you too. But
So
I'm no one's teacher.
that's why I mentioned it.
I'm nobody's teacher. Joy said I'm nobody's teacher. You'd be shocked at what I believe. If I really went into discussing what I learned in the writing department working on the Proclaimers book, I was 6 months on one particular belief of the organization. I could talk hours on stuff like that. But I don't, because the issue is for me and Joy is neither is child abuse. It's harm, shunning, all of this. The
Blood
harm,
policy, child abuse.
Yeah. These policies and practices in the organization replace dogma to the organization. They are more important to them than the teaching of the kingdom. I know because I lived it and I saw it. They say the fine words in the magazine, but they don't follow just the absolute immoral requirement of what the scriptures say. They get around it, and they're still getting around it. So that's where my argument is. If you want to talk religion, there's plenty of people that on the internet that they just love to have their opinions and your opinions. You know, it's back and forth. It's very nice. I have no problem with it. So, and I appreciate your interest. You'd like to make sure that Jesus' will is on my side or I'm on his side, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm just surprised how you went from door to door. You were up in Bethel. You studied the Bible. You read the scriptures.
I converted 80 people. Joe and I converted 80 people. We counted them up one time years ago. And we love the teachings because the teachings were going to make it fair for everybody to live on this earth in happiness. The Awake editor made the statement to my face, and he said this. He said, Adam and Eve.
But that's okay. And I'm just going to hang up now, okay? Thank you very much.
Thanks for calling.
Yeah, thank you. So, you know, like he said, that God is going to make it up to all mankind because all mankind didn't sin. Adam and Eve sinned. And so everybody's suffering, but God's going to make it up to them, to everybody. Well, that was his viewpoint, and put it in a magazine. And but other people will read that and say, what? How can you read that into anything? But that's the atonement. But then they add on to it. So I don't mean to sound like I'm critical of that. That's just opinion. It's just like politics. If you watch MSNBC or Fox, that's all opinions.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
I had enough of all of that. And I had my strong opinions, and I converted a lot of people to them. Where are they today? I don't know. I don't need, and many of them were very troubled people. That's the one thing I remember. The people who listened to what we had to say were troubled people, not happy people. They were. And so consequently, the organization, so many of them that came into the organization were troubled people and brought with them their troubles. So
They were human beings.
Yeah. Well, how about it, Rick?
Well, I think you guys did a good job. I really, really do. I really appreciate Joy coming on and wanting to be part of the program tonight. That was wonderful. She could do that. She shared a lot of information with us, and always good to hear from you, Barbara. Now, look, I tell you what, we're getting a lot of people watching here tonight. I don't know if you can see it or not. Does it show the views on your side?
Yes,
Not
it is.
online.
And Wisdom of the Eons, that's the name of that music. And somebody or Toady Films, that's got to be Richard. He put it on.
Is there a place we can download that music from?
Yes, I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Wisdom of the Aeons, Eons, right?
Yeah, if anyone wants it, I'll send them a copy. Write me at jwworldnews@gmail.com. jwworldnews@gmail.com. I'll send that off to you.
Right.
Yeah, look at the numbers, Barbara. We're pushing 200 people watching live right now.
Oh my God, it's time for me to go.
that's good. That's good numbers for YouTube live. Now, when this goes up, we'll hit. Looks like we'll hit 5 or 6, maybe up to 10,000 people that'll view this. So that's a good thing. That shows people are leaving the Watchtower, they're listening in, and that's wonderful.
Or they're all my relatives. One of them.
Well, I know you called them ahead of time. Said I'm on time.
Anyway, yeah, Rick, thank you for making this available.
Thank you for letting me come
I think
on.
it's good. I think it's good for us all to get our footprints here.
Yeah.
I really, really do. And as long as I'm having fun, I've been doing this now 20 years. It'll be 20 years, January 26th, 2025.
Wow.
And I have never missed, but I'm not bragging when I say it, I have never missed a Saturday night.
No.
As long as I'm having fun, I will do this. And I'm having fun, Barbara and Joy. I'm having fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah. We always have fun when I'm here. I always have fun. That's why I do it too. And anyway, you all know that I talk a lot, but my excuse for that is I'm interesting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I laugh?
But that's prejudice. I'm partial. I'm interesting. I got a lot of experiences, but anyway, but it is fun, and we look forward to in 2 weeks to be back. And I'm not going to tell you who I'm going to interview then because I don't have the slightest idea. So if you got a story to tell, contact me. I'm running out of friends. So, okay, Rick, I gotta go. I got a hungry husband sitting
Go take care of your husband. Joy, thank you too for coming on and being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Again, thank you. And you guys have a good night. And all those listening in, stay with us. We got more programming up. Thank you very much. All right, stay on the 6 screens. Telenetwork.
Bye-bye.
That was Barbara Anderson. Her program, of course, is Watchtower Insider. Barbara Anderson speaks and tells all. So now we are going to JW World News. Well, that's the news the Watchtower doesn't want us talking about, but we're going to be talking about it here tonight. So don't leave us. Don't leave us. Stay right on these YouTube channels, and stay also as well on a Facebook channel, Six Screens, as well as well, right now it's on Facebook, my channel Facebook page, and also on our radio telephone network. Thank you for being with us. We're going to end the program right here. We'll see you in just a couple of minutes on JW World News.